Investor and philanthropist George Soros has handed over control of his $25 billion business empire to his 37-year-old son, Alex Soros. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Alex Soros reportedly told the Wall Street Journal that he is now chairman of his 92-year-old father's Open Society foundations and plans to support the same causes as his dad, which that includes donations to voting and abortion rights and a whole lot of other things, criminal justice, etc. Soros said he was going to expand his father's political aims and that, quote, "we think alike." But he said, in comparison, "I'm more political." Alex Soros recently met with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, as well as Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to, quote, advocate for better relations to the family foundation, according to the Wall Street Journal.
Soros' son also reportedly said the Democratic Party needs to be better about being more patriotic and inclusive, and that just because someone votes Trump doesn't mean they're lost or racist. According to the Wall Street Journal, people close to George believe that Alex's older half-brother, Jonathan, was set to take over his father's business empire, but then a falling out took place.
Well, by the time I'm 37, I would love to inherit billions and billions of my father's money.
Also, check out that age gap. Soros Sr. was active, he had a little bit of a late in life because he's in his 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
And that guy
That's
is
the son, not a
my
grandson.
age.
Yeah. It is interesting.
Yeah, so look, it's interesting that there was a presumed heir that is not the one that's going to be taking over. I think substantively it doesn't sound like much is going to change in terms of the big ticket priorities of the Soros dollars philanthropy. However, it is interesting to hear that now that George Soros, the heir, is more political, but also in a way that seems to be not in a kind of liberal leaning direction. And by liberal, I mean like capital L, capital D Democratic Party, where there is this never Trumpism that has taken over the party. What he sounds like is more of a leftist perspective that says, you know, there is a populist movement to be building towards some of these objectives, and alienating working class voters simply because they voted for Trump and stigmatizing them unnecessarily is not necessarily conducive to that goal.
I read his is more political. I could be wrong. My reading was that means he cares more about Democrats, electing Democrats, and might not be as interested in the policy-related causes of his father. So it was more about, he's more political in that he's in the literal game of politics. So it is likely the Soros money will continue to flow to Democrats, but you know, maybe other causes that were important to Dad are going to get a backseat. That was my reading of it, but maybe I'm getting this wrong.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It does feel like specifically it's not a moment to back away from abortion rights, given that Republicans really had a dog catches car situation with Dobbs, whereas now they're all trying to dig themselves out of it. And the statements by certain Republicans that they are going to push for a federal abortion ban. Donald Trump oddly has that going for him, that he has been more cautious about leaning into overturning Roe, although he has claimed credit for that happening. He's kind of trying to have it both ways. But it is certainly an issue that is doing very well for Democrats, that is largely the cause of their midterm success, or at least fending off the disaster that people anticipated midterms would be. And Soros funding certainly going to that particular cause, as well as voting rights issues, are really bread and butter for the Democrats right now.
He is, given that the Soroses give just so much money, he is easily able to get sit-downs with important, influential Democrats around the clock anytime he wants. This is reporting from the Free Beacon that he was able to meet with Vice President Kamala Harris just last week. There's photos here of him with Nancy Pelosi, Harris, Biden. He's met with them repeatedly. Actually, Alex Soros appears to have open access to the White House, having visited at least 17 times during Biden's presidency. It's a lot of times.
Yeah, it really speaks to how
when you're given
problematic having kind of free-flowing corporate dollars in politics is. Of course, that is enabled by Citizens United, largely a court case that was backed by conservative justices and conservatives generally speaking, but the consequence is exactly this, an arms race of billionaires to control our government. And we recently were talking about the scandal over Clarence Thomas's palling around with a different billionaire, real estate billionaire, Harlan Crow. And there were a lot of claims about how that wouldn't influence his jurisprudence, how no one should be concerned about it. But I think it is concerning there and it's concerning here. And if you are a principled person and not just someone who kind of politically out of political convenience talks about globalist or George Soros or whatever, but actually someone who wants there to be a real democracy where our political agenda is chosen by the people and not by whatever billionaire has more money or what might happen to align with your interests in certain cases, then you have to, in a bipartisan, non-political way across the board, be a part of a movement to put limits on how much spending can influence politics.
He also has a beef with Taylor Swift.
Why is
that?
that?
Free Beacon report. Alex Soros led a consortium of investors who bought the rights to Swift's unreleased music for $300 million.
Was that part of the dispute that she was having with her former producer?
I'm not sure. It looks to me like Scooter Braun and his financial backers, 23 Capital, Alex Soros, and the Soros family have seen the latest balance sheets and realized that paying $300 million for my music wasn't exactly a wise choice and they need money, she said in 2020. My opinion, just another case of shameless greed in the time of COVID. So tasteless, but very transparent.
That feels right. Taylor Swift is really winning these days. She obviously has had a lot of influence as there continue disputes over the Ticketmaster debacle and the monopoly they have over ticket sales in a way that really hurts artists from being able to profit from their own talents. She had the first glimpse of her kind of political nature came out of, I think, her documentary, which showed her fighting with her team, including her dad, about how open she was going to be about her political beliefs. I think because of an LGBTQIA law that was on the books or coming down the pike in Tennessee that she wanted to speak out against. And there was some question about whether it was going to hurt her career, and she didn't care, but her team did. And it is interesting to see her on the other side of someone who is described to be a liberal-leaning ally of the left, who in this case it seems to have aligned himself against someone who had a relationship that's been described as abusive with Taylor Swift in a way that was limiting her agency both musically and personally. So I think this goes to, again, show this lesson that money obviously separates people, frequently rather, separates people from their ideology and often speaks much louder than anybody's individual personal beliefs. Personal profit and those kinds of agendas tend to be louder than whatever anybody says in their heart or what's on paper. Soros
has become such a target of conservative criticisms of Democratic priorities, and because he has given tons and tons and tons and tons of money.
$1.5 billion in 2021.
Absolutely out there trying to influence politics and policy. With this shifting toward the sun, it doesn't look like there's going to be much of a kind of change, and it looks like the priorities are very similar. In fact, maybe that change in who was going to be the heir, because the other son, perhaps, I'm reading between the lines, maybe didn't exactly have those same priorities. Yeah. So it looks like it's going to be a huge continuation here in terms of the funding priorities. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, we will have more Rising right after this.